Good evening and welcome to another video podcast from Hendy Consulting, the specialist management consulting firm for the $125 billion FPD display market. And today I'd like to do another piece on Apple's display strategy, but I want to put a particular emphasis on it. And the emphasis on it as I do the voiceover to the slides is really what is the implication beyond Apple's direct application of choices of display technology. So what is it, the impact that other people then do based on the lead that they set? And I've always called this effect the Apple ripple effect, and that's what I really want to talk about here a little bit. And I think everybody understands that when Apple sets a direction in displays, then other people follow. Certainly in terms of when Apple first decided to go to Flex OLED, they have probably around 200 million units in total, and what you saw was 600 million units of capacity immediately show up in across the industry to serve them. So essentially three major suppliers all said, yes, we want that business, and put down 200 million units of capacity. And then it got worse than that, and that's archetypally probably the problem of the Flex OLED space. But that is exactly it. When Apple moves in a direction, then other people see that as being critically important and follow. And I guess that's the argument that I'm trying to make here, is that when Apple makes a move, then it makes a distinct impact on other players. And then actually sometimes, I mean, what's important here is that they don't actually have a direct hand in any of this, right? They're only an influencer. But for example, one other case is when Apple came across specific technology, and the case example I wanted to use was FFS, the fringing field IP that they found as part of e-ink. They pushed that on the whole industry, and it actually moved across the industry very, very quickly. And it's an almost beautiful example. I'm sure e-ink were very, very happy with that. But it's an example of when Apple does something, then the impact can be multiplied across the industry much faster than it would have done otherwise. So let's just talk a little bit about Apple and the extent of their business. And really, the only thing that's new is their in-house work on MicroLED more recently. And they do actually have a facility they picked up in Taiwan where they can do some sort of process work. But in general, they're not a display maker other than the MicroLED work. They basically worked with their merchant partners. They have a pure purchasing relationship with SDC, although I'm sure there is quite a lot of collaboration on new things. But I mean, I would have argued that LGD, JDI and Sharp are more of their sort of typical development partners for technology if they had the choice. And we called them in the past the priest because they're so absolutely fascinated with the industrial form factor, and that leads what they do. And if you look at some of the key technologies that they've chosen in the past, you can talk about the work on in-cell touch and PCAP in general, the work on fringing field, IPS pixel structures. They certainly influenced the degree to which the Flex OLED world came to the case. You can talk about their role in introducing higher resolution and the role of IGZO in particular for some of the iPad related displays. And then in particular recently, this is definitely an Apple agenda, was the role of low temp polyoxide, which is then almost a step up from their point of view. It's actually using their IP and then suggesting people use this and implement it across their fabs. And this was a slide I wrote a while back, but it was then trying to predict new things that they might be into. And I think I called it right in terms of mini LED and micro LED, but where I didn't put enough emphasis on it was the potential role they would have in just supporting massive adoption of OLED going forward. And that seems to be actually a new agenda. So if we went back and think about, well, what is important things that Apple has actually been involved in? Well, I mean, the iPhone was absolutely important in terms of both capacitive touch, but then also the move to transmissive displays. Prior to this, you basically had candy bar phones where the leading technology was actually transflective, and that's what Nokia had pursued. But then Apple flipped the whole of the display industry on its head, and you started seeing then the role of the Koreans in transmissive mode, amorphous LCD, and then capacitive touch. And, indeed, their role in pushing forward the Flex OLED agenda, clearly Apple was one of the main two customers there. They also did do quite a lot in cherry picking technology that they like, and in particular this one we're talking about fringing field, where they actually basically decided they wanted this particular pixel structure and pushed the display industry to adopt it everywhere, to the benefit of E-Ink, who picked up licensing revenues from all sorts of players fairly quickly. So again, this is the role in Apple being the shadow hand on the total industry. And of course, I think everybody understands their role in low-temp polyoxide as a power reduction strategy. Started in watch, but then was moved to phone. It is a little bit footprint constrained, and there are difficulties in making low-temp polyoxide. But certainly, STC has managed to do so. And actually, the challenge has been whether or not the display players themselves are fully capable of implementing what is quite a difficult technology at a process level. Also, you get interference between the polysilicon and the oxide in terms of hydrogenation problems, so it's not a simple stack to do. And then of course Apple's role in terms of pushing a little bit the role of oxide in some of mid-tier devices. The most recent one, I guess, and the one where you could say also Apple is being industry changing, is the role of the MicroLED watch, which is considered to be coming out probably more likely at the beginning of 2025. There will be some beneficiaries, including AMS Osram, supplying the wafers. But anyway, this is where Apple's role, even from their first view of picking up LuxView back in 2013, has fundamentally changed a technology agenda for the industry. And what's really fascinating to me now is their Omdia believes that they are actually going to adopt OLED agenda across pretty much most of their non-smartphone categories. And I mean, this is hugely expensive. I haven't yet added up what the capex impact will be for all of this, but then you can multiply that out across, because what Apple does, other people will follow. And so that's like the multiplier and the ripple effect here is if we start seeing all of these products moving away from some pretty sexy implementations in mini LED, but then moving towards hybrid OLED, which is basically a glass lower surface and a TFE top solution. It's not just the effect of Apple's purchasing behavior that's shifting that's important, but the impact on other people. So this is really then my revised slide that now has the Gen 8 mid-sized OLED thrust very strongly indicated right here, because this is really Apple pushing, and the decisions around that previous slide will make a big difference to other people following into the same domain space. So I hope that was interesting. I also now in all of my pitchings want to make clear to people the role of management consulting for displays as opposed to market research. There are 3 stunning market research companies for the display industry: Omdia, DSCC and Yole, particularly around MicroLED, but also their mini LED coverage is very good. And I think everyone should understand that market research is particularly good for questions like how big is this marketplace, what is the pricing, what are the trends, and what investments are planned. So that should be your primary source of those are the sort of your questions. And then differentially, the things that we sort of try to answer are questions like, is our technology any good and how can we improve it? How do we collaborate with the display industry? How do we set up a JDA that's fair and shares value in the right way? Should I build a factory for this technology? If so, when? And how do I mitigate risk? And how can I then make my display-related business more successful? So it's the notion of the questions, the type of work that gets done that is a little bit different between the two. Anyway, I hope you found this little trip down Apple Lane interesting, and I wish you a good day.